the way to address it isn't just to panic. If you're a business owner and you're concerned about this, and just say, well, I don't want your monitoring. I don't want you to have remote access capability, because you might be throwing a lot of stuff out that you really do want and you really should have that does protect you.
Travis,
what's going on, Robert?
Is my IT guy spying on me?
Is he? I hope not. I hope he's not spying on you.
Me too. That's the topic for this week. This is something that actually seen on trending topics on Google, and is also just a good question. A question that a lot of people have, especially now with big tech, with big data. People are worried about the privacy. So when you have somebody who has access to your computer, to your camera, you might wonder, am I getting spied on? So,
right,
Travis,
sure.
This could be an interesting topic. Is my IT guy spying on me? What do you say?
Yeah, people are concerned about this, and I would say that most people are overly concerned about this. We've actually had in the past some folks who, when they find out that part of our strategy is to install a remote monitoring and management tool on their laptops and desktops, they get really worried. Like, well, what are you going to do? What are you looking at? And I understand that, because your IT person is going to have access then to your files and to your machine remotely, but first off, I want to say I understand that there's a lot of different people out there, a lot of different personalities, and maybe you've had a bad experience with somebody in the past doing something they shouldn't do. So, of course, obviously, it's possible that you're working with somebody who's not professional, and you're working with somebody who is dishonest. That's always a possibility. But one of the things that I think is important to realize is that when you're entrusting your information technology over to somebody, you are giving them. You are giving them access to your environment, and you are accepting, you're putting a lot of trust in that person. You're accepting a level of insight into your organization. When you do that, when you give that to them, they're going to have that access. See, as an IT person, we're going to, generally speaking, have administrative access over your servers, administrative access over your switches and your routers. We have the keys of the kingdom. And there are scenarios that can be set up with least trust, where your MSP doesn't have complete access to your environment. But generally speaking, when you're doing that, it's because you have a different IT person who's going to have the full administrative credentials, right? Somebody's going to have them. Somebody has to have them, because if you don't have the access to actually control the network, you can't support the network, you can't set up users. So at some point, you have to trust somebody, and you have to trust that person isn't going to do something that's nefarious or something that's weird. You're going to have to trust somebody to do that. So the question is, are you working? If you're really worried about that, are you working with the right people?
Yeah, that's a great question. If you're working with the wrong people, if your IT guy's, outside of your window with some binoculars, then you might be
if he's doing the Marty
you.
McFly from Back to the Future, just hanging out there, then that's a problem.
He's a peeping Tom.
Yeah, that's the obvious way to know that. But I guess here's another question associated with this topic. This puts a lot of liability also back on the user, because if you're super worried about your IT guy spying on you, I mean, I can understand if you're like holding government secrets or something like that, where there's a whole nother conversation behind that. But if you're super worried about it, there might be some things that you're doing on your work computer that maybe aren't a good idea to do on your work computer.
Possibly. So it's a fair question to ask somebody, what is it that you want to make sure you're protecting? Do you have intellectual property that you want to make sure is protected? Do you have patient data? There's HIPAA requirements. So there are legitimate reasons to make sure that your information technology people are not going certain places they don't need to be. In fact, they never should be doing something in your environment without a reason. And I want to point this out. You can hold them accountable. A good information technology company is going to have a process. That process is usually going to be something where there's a ticket generated. It's going to be something like this, right? They generate a ticket. The ticket explains what they're going to do. They reach out to you and say, I'm going to remote into your system now. Is this a good time? They're going to have that communication. They're not just dropping in behind the scenes without talking to you first and without a reason to be there. And then they're going to limit their access to what the job requires. This thing is busted. I'm here to do this thing. And that's all they're going to do. And your information technology company should have good logs, really good tracking. They should be able to reproduce this data on request. So if you said, hey, somebody logged into my machine at this time, why? They should be able to say, okay, well, here's the ticket. Here's what they were doing. Because there is some stuff that happens, let's say after hours, where maybe it's not an attended session. So maybe the user isn't on the computer when the work's being done. But even then, there should be policies created around this. And as a business owner, you should understand what those are. You should have an agreement with your vendor, what they are going to do, what they aren't going to do, when they are going to do it, when they aren't going to do it. So again, all this can be mitigated through good process, good communication, and working with somebody who's professional to begin with, and a good vendor that has a good reputation. But, even still, I'll say this, people have been caught in the government spying, on machines that they weren't supposed to have access to, or in large corporate. I mean, espionage happens. So you definitely want to make sure that you've had the conversation, because, I would hate to have my answer here be, well, just trust everybody. That's not a good answer. So make sure there's good practices in place, good policies in place, and that you're taking a reasonable effort to protect your environment. But I would also like to address your earlier statement, which is, you're right. When somebody's worried that you're watching what they're doing, why? What is the reason for that? And there should be a good reason. If the reason is I am doing something, and which could be so many different things. I am doing something on my computer, my work computer, and I don't want anybody to know about it. That's a problem. And if the person who's saying that is an employee in the organization, I think it's important, we do on occasion when we get that pushback, we do go up to, management inside of that company and say, let's have a conversation with this person about why it is that they're so concerned with our access. What's going on here? Because it can be a concern for the business owner. When the person is the business owner, it's a whole different different problem.
That's another ball game. Yeah,
it is.
Yeah, that reminds me actually of another subject that we've talked about on our podcasts, which is one of the main reasons why this is an important thing to talk about. But working remotely now, this is even more of a concern than maybe it previously was, because when you're working remotely, there's this whole gray area. Maybe you're using your personal computer to work remotely. And if that's the case, then maybe your whole, Netflix history and the shows that you like and, what you watch on YouTube or whatever else you're doing on your personal time, that is personal and that is your business. But if you're sharing the computer with work and personal, then maybe there is some reason for concern there, even if it's, innocent, that you just don't want people meddling into your business.
Yeah, it's complicated. This goes into this sort of bring your own device, BYOD arena, which is how do you manage security on a device that belongs not to the company, but belongs to the individual? The easiest way is don't do it. The easiest way is issue corporate devices and you don't even have to think about it. But that's just not practical. So yeah, if somebody's using their home machine, the company's going to have some sort of, or should have some sort of policy with regards to how to secure that machine if necessary and how to handle that situation. It might be to implement mobile device management, and then they can explain we only look at these things on this side of your computer, and we're not looking at your browser history, we're not looking at your location data, we're not looking at that stuff. We're just trying to manage this one little sandbox over here. Or maybe it's, hey, everything's on the web. and you just go through a bunch of web portals to do your work, and we've disabled the ability for you to download things through the web onto your machine, and so it's secure that way, and we don't really care what's going on your machine because you can't do anything anyways. So there's multiple ways to handle that. But yeah, you're right. When it's your own personal device, again, it's a whole nother level of intrusion potentially, and these things have to be addressed. But the way to address it isn't just to panic. If you're a business owner and you're concerned about this, and just say, well, I don't want your monitoring, I don't want you to have remote access capability, because you might be throwing a lot of stuff out that you really do want and you really should have, that does protect you, does reduce your liability and your exposure in a lot of ways. And so you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. You don't want to, don't do that. Have the conversation with your technologist, whoever is helping you with this, your IT provider. Have them explain to you what they do, what they don't do, when they do it, when they don't do it, how their system is built and their policies are built, and what controls they have in place to regulate that. Have that. Then also express your concerns to them. Like, what is it you're worried about? Hey, I have a lot of intellectual property and I'm worried about it being stolen from China or from somebody in the United States or a competitor or whatever. This is what I'm trying to protect. Have them help you protect it, because that's the kind of thing we love to do, right? We love to help people. We're here to solve problems. We're not, and if you have an IT person who's like, oh, no, I have to have access to it. No, that you're working with the wrong person again. They're going to go, oh yeah, no, here's how we secure that. And here's how we set that up. And we'll give you only access to it. That should excite them. But make sure it's a good reason. And if there's other stuff going on, don't do it on your work computer, whatever that is. Don't do it in general, but don't do it on your work computer. All right. Like, if you've got other stuff that you're worried about being found out about because, it's against the law or it's unethical or whatever, don't be, foolish here. Clearly there should be a delineation between what's appropriate at work and what's not appropriate. So, I mean, I hate that I should even say that. Everybody should know that. But yeah, your IT person in this case is going to help you out as an organization and protect you from, potential theft, potential stealing of IP by actually having their agent on. They're going to maybe protect you from sexual harassment claims and things like that by actually being involved in administering your environment. So if you're a business owner, you want your IT people to have clear insights into what's going on in your environment so that they can protect you. So try to see it that way. They work for you. We work for our customers, not against them. So we're there to protect them. We're not there to be the threat.
Yeah. It kind of makes me think of like Secret Service, protecting the president or whoever it may be that they're protecting. If they don't have access to certain things, then the level of protection is going to be lower. There's a certain level of trust that has to be there. They have to be able to be close to the asset, or else they can't properly protect it. That's something that businesses might want to keep in mind. And then also, and this may be coming from an ignorant point of view, but I would love for you to clarify this, because I would assume that others might think the same thing. But usually when someone remote accesses in to your computer, at least while you're there present, there is obviously, like you mentioned, someone would probably tell you ahead of time. But even if not, usually there's some kind of a notification that someone is remote accessing your computer, correct? So it's not like you're just sitting there going about your business and obviously this isn't 100%, but usually I would assume
there can be, but actually, yeah, I want to make it clear. When you give somebody administrative access to your environment, they are the administrators of that environment. It's a very powerful thing to hand over. So that's why it's really important. You pick somebody you trust that's professional, that does a good job and that has good answers to these questions. Because once you have administrative access, you can do quite a bit, and no, it's not always visible. It's not. And so I wouldn't want to mislead somebody and make them think that. In fact, there are actually features built into most of these remote access softwares that can even allow you to blank that person's screen and to do work without them being able to see it. Now, there's reasons for that. Again, if you're working on something and there's some data that you're worried is going to pass in front of the screen that is sensitive intellectual property, it's patient data, it's credit card information, it's passwords, it's something like that, and you need to hide it then because you've got multiple things going on here because of your escalated privileges, then there's a reason why that feature exists. Our staff has a utilization requirement, right? We have to, they can't waste their time on just anything. They need to work and actually say what they were working on. And we need to know that a certain percentage of their time was actually allocated to actually doing, labor that we were contracted to do. So it's not like our staff has a bunch of time to sit around and, pore over your important documents in your files. Okay. They don't. There are also things in place to prevent them from doing that, again, through our process. Where were you? What were you doing? Why were you doing it? That needs to be documented. So I want to help people understand that these are businesses. MSPs run businesses, especially the bigger, more well-run ones. It's harder for stuff like this to go on. In a small MSP, 1, 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, maybe it's not as difficult because they don't have as much process, they don't have as much oversight, and they don't have as much maybe skill set, and so maybe you are a little bit more vulnerable there. But again, this is why it's just important that you know who you're working with, you trust them, not without reason, but because they have a good reputation, they have a proven track record of doing things right and professionally. And you can tell some of this too by the way that they act and talk with regards to other competitors, other vendors, past clients and current clients. You know this, right? You want to see somebody who's got great testimonials that people are willing to speak on their behalf, call their references, look at their Google reviews, but actually do the work to see, are these people really who they say they are? Really do call their references. That's a big thing for me. Really do ask them, what are your policies? What are your processes? What do you do to protect us? Test it. Say, provide me some information. This happened on this date. I'd like to see why it happened. Can you show me what's going on? Don't just take their word for it. Make sure that they actually are able to deliver on their promises.
Well, clearly, very, very good information. This was, I learned a lot. Hopefully anyone else tuning into this video, there's a lot to grasp here, and an important subject. But again, as we always do, we're going to summarize this, break it down, condense it, make it simple. Let's keep IT simple. 30 seconds or less. Travis, is my IT guy spying on me?
If you're working with a professional with a good reputation, absolutely not. That's not what they're doing. They're there to do a job. But remember, you need to ask the right questions to pick the right partners and to get the right answers. So that's my recommendation. Work with the right people. And if you're really worried, maybe it's time to work with somebody else.